Hey guys, Matt Allen here. Welcome back to Tactical Bassin. Today, we're talking everything you need to know about summertime jig fishing. The jig is one of the original core bass fishing techniques. To be a serious bass angler, you need to have a solid grasp on how to fish it effectively and how to use this tool to catch more fish. Now, even as I say that, I am aware that the jig is one of the most intimidating baits in bass fishing. I would say the ranking is swim baits for most intimidating, then frog fishing, then a jig. I was shocked to find that years ago, but that has held true. Now, there are anglers, maybe like yourself, who throw a jig every single day. I throw a jig a ton, but most anglers are intimidated by them. They don't understand when to use this instead of a creature bait or something else. And then once you get into jigs, many tackle shops have a whole wall of jigs. A whole wall of creature baits to choose as trailers. So many options, it's just overwhelming. It doesn't have to be that way. Today we are narrowing it down. I have a total of 6 jigs on deck, and they are for 3 very different situations. So actually 2 jigs for each of 3 situations. You can listen to the situation, what we use the jigs for, and if that is similar to where you fish, you've got 2 jigs and a trailer or 2 for those conditions, and that's it. We are going to make it very simple for you today. To start it off, we're going to talk about what you would need if you only needed 1 as well, just to make it incredibly simple. Don't let the jig intimidate you. This is a big bass tool. It is a tool in your arsenal that you can use to target above average fish, both right now when it's hot and the rest of the year. This time of year specifically, the heat of summer, when it gets hot, bass are looking for easy meals. They start getting lethargic. The hotter it gets over the next month and a half, these fish will start sort of locking down, taking those easy shots, not running around going crazy like they have been. They start getting pickier, and a big meal like a jig is a great option for one of those giant bass. So you've got a bait that you can lock into your hand and have a real shot at catching the biggest fish that you will cross paths with. Now, if I could only have one, this is the Dirty Jigs pitching jig. The size is 1/2 ounce, and I'm going to link this in the video description for you, along with everything else I talk about today. All the jigs, all the trailers, the rods and reels, specific colors, specific sizes. It will all be in the description. Every link will go straight to Tackle Warehouse, where you can see full-size images of that bait, the colors, all those things. So you don't have to take notes. But back to this, Dirty Jigs 1/2 ounce pitching jig. The color is called the Go-To. If I could only have one, that is the one. I can do almost anything with this jig. I can take this thing and I can fish offshore. I can go up shallow, flip around cover. I can drag it like it's a football. I can do everything with it. And that one color, the Go-To, is so adaptable. We can take that. Another one, if that one was sold out, I'd probably throw brown craw would be number 2. It's just a little more brown than this, but almost the same thing. That jig just gives me endless options. It's not perfect for every situation, but it will work in any situation. So if I need to gamble and I need a jig with me, that's the one. I have that paired up to the X-Zone 4-inch muscleback craw, this bait right here. So again, if I could only have one, that's the one. That bait, that trailer kicks. So if I'm flipping cover, it's swimming on the way down. If I'm dragging bottom, it just gives me a profile, just dragging along, a little craw profile. If I'm stroking that jig out in deep water, it hops up and then swims back down. It's just a great all-around option. Now, in the past, see, I sort of trend through things. So I have been catching a lot more fish on these kicking style trailers the last few years. For many years prior to that, I did the bulk of my damage on what I called profile trailers or dead action trailers. So this is the Missile Baits D-Bomb. If I was going to have a second trailer, so one jig with 2 trailer options to truly do every situation, I would grab the D-Bomb. This color is called Super Bug, and if I could only get one, that would be the one. One side of it is green pumpkin black flake, the other side is black blue. I can turn it one way and have a very natural jig. I can turn it the other way and have more of a bold jig for murkier conditions. But if I had these 2 trailers and this one jig, I could do 99% of things in bass fishing. Is it perfect every day? No. Will it work every day? Absolutely. That is the pitching jig. So that is the core jig in everything that I do. And that remains true year round. Forget summertime. I could use this jig every day of the year. There are better jigs for different situations, but this one will always work. Now, let's take it one step further, because I said I have 6 jigs, 2 for each category, okay? This, also dirty jigs. I throw a lot of those. Not all of these are, but a lot of them are. This is the Dirty Jigs compact pitching jig. Slightly narrowed up head, but still a pitchin' arky style head, but a significantly lighter, smaller hook. I still use that muscleback craw, but I go down to the smaller size. And again, I'll link it all in the description, so you don't have to try to remember. But by going to the compact jig, I can go to much lighter lines. So if I'm in the South, Texas, Florida, Bama, Mississippi, Louisiana, or I'm out in California, I'm on Clear Lake, the California Delta, big bass factories, I'll throw that full-size pitching jig, and I can throw it on 17 to 20 pound line. I can throw it down to 15, but I can go up 17, 20 pound, no problem all day long. But if I'm on those fisheries and the water gets clearer, maybe there hasn't been a storm for a while, maybe there's not an algae bloom right now, the water's getting cleaner, it gets tougher to get bit on that 20 pound. Maybe you're on a fishery that's always a little cleaner, or maybe you're on a fishery where the fish aren't giant, right? You're not out there flipping wondering if today's the day you flip a 10 pounder. You're out there flipping wondering if today's the day you catch a 4 to 6 pounder. That compact pitching jig offers all the same benefits, same colors, same profile, that head will come through anything, same trailer, just a little bit smaller, and a lighter hook. The result is that we can drop down to 10 to 15 pound line, fishing the jig the exact same way, but with lighter line equals more bites. I go to heavier line if I'm concerned that I'm going to hook a fish that I can't control. I'm gonna get a giant. I wanna make sure I've got a heavy hook and heavy line. That's my goal, right? I get the bite, I want them in the boat. I don't wanna fish story, I wanna fish photo. But if I think that I'll be around smaller fish, or I'm in clearer water where I need to go lighter to get the bite in the first place, compact pitching jig. I'll get more bites, it works in more situations, and if I hook a 10 pounder, I've got a great chance. It's a great hook. I just know I'm on a little bit lighter line. They're gonna pull a little bit harder, and I'm gonna have to work to keep them out of the really heavy cover. So that's that core of jig fish. And we could stop right there, and almost everybody watching this video would be set. But there are people in really clear water situations, people that fish where there are a lot of smaller fish, and people that fish where there are giants and there's heavy cover. Let's talk about those 2 ends of the spectrum, all right? Let's go, you know what, before we do, let's talk about a rod. So that pitching jig, if I could only have one rod, I'm gonna tell you my perfect rod for that situation. From Shimano in the X Pride line, this is the 7'4" heavy. That rod is perfectly built to handle that 1/2 to 3/4 ounce jig. It is. It's perfect for it. Now, I throw a jig a ton, so I have also invested in a high-end reel. That rod's like mid to high 200s. This reel is in the 400s, okay? This is a Shimano Metanium MGL. That gives me incredible casting distance when I'm trying to reach out. It gives me an incredibly smooth reel, an incredibly smooth drag. It's just a high-end, incredibly performing reel. When these are put together, that is an unstoppable jig rod. The reason why that 7.4 heavy is so special compared to many other 7.4 heavies that are out there is that it has a more moderate action than most heavy action rods. It is much more moderate. When I fish a jig, when I set the hook, I don't want to just fold the tip of the rod and lock a fish up. I want to fold the whole rod. That way, if a big one comes up to jump, as they're jumping and head shaking, the rod never fully unloads. It never goes back to straight. If it goes back to straight, they have slack line, and as they're head shaking, they can spit that jig. A lot of people have lost big jig fish because their rod was too fast. We go to more of a moderate action. We can load deeper, and even when they're head shaking and the rod is loading and unloading, it's never unloading all the way. It's just coming part way back. There's always pressure holding the jig in place. Makes all the difference in the world. And of course, if you're not a fanatic like me, if you don't throw a jig every day, if this isn't always in your boat, you don't need a $400 reel, right? A Corrado 150 MGL, incredible reel for the job. You can even go, I mean, there's so many, you go to an SLX 150, you'll be just fine. So many good reels, but I use that Metanium because of the distance, how smooth it is, and the fact that I have destroyed this reel for years, and it still feels like the day that I first picked it up. All right, that's that core jig and the core jig rod. Now let's talk about the heavy stuff. Then we'll go to the really finessey stuff. Guys in the South, guys in heavy cover. I mean, there are guys in the North in heavy cover fishing giants too. If you're a heavy cover guy, if you're fishing grass, that's where we start talking about true flipping style jigs. And of course, we've got two. This is the nastiest flipping jig there is. This is the Dirty Jigs No Jack. It's a mouthful. No Jack Series 2 flipping jig. The No Jack, what's that mean? All right, we're looking at a pointed style head. See how it's a V style head? That V is what you want if you're specifically fishing grass. Now the hook, that's the No Jack. That is called the No Jack hook. You can't bend that thing out with a truck. It's crazy how strong it is. I have flipped so many giants on that jig through the years. It's amazing. Now, when you're flipping a jig, you want a pointed style head in grass. A pitching style head is better in wood, because if you have a V in wood, so like a branch coming off, and you stick a V head into there, it's stuck. Whereas a pitching jig will sort of hang up, but you can shake it and pop it over because it doesn't lock in there. A V, a pointed head, will lock into wood and get really stuck. But in grass, nothing will split grass better than that wedged pointed head. It comes through grass like a dream. So if I'm flipping heavy cover all day long, no question that's the head I want. If I'm around giant bass, no question that's the hook I want. When I'm flipping cover, it's actually the same two trailers. It really is. So one thing I skipped, and we'll come back to that here in just a second, but that muscleback craw, that's my primary, that 4-inch muscleback craw, and there it is on the back of that jig. Full profile, I've got the whole trailer in there, and it just pairs up so beautifully. This is why you watch the whole video. We're about to back up. I'm gonna give you an extra tip. But I'll go to that muscleback craw or that exact same Missile Baits D-bomb, and I fish the whole bait on there as well. Now back to that pitching jig I already talked about. I showed you exact same trailer, but notice the length difference in the feet or in the claws. That's because when I throw a pitching jig, I like the more compact profile. So I take that 4-inch bait and I pinch about a 1/2 inch off of the top of it. See it? This one has been pinched down. But I still want the full-size claws. That's why I do that. I don't go down to the smaller bait until I go to that lighter jig. On the big full-size jig, I always want the full profile claws, but I do pinch a 1/2 inch off for my pitching jig. For my flipping jigs, full profile is key. We're flipping for big ones most of the time, and a full profile just seems to help me get those really big bites. And again, those flapping feet, when I'm punching through overhead cover, letting it fall down, it's swimming down, and that seems to help me get more bites. Now, there are days when they just don't want it, and that's when the D-bomb comes out. Then that's just, it just falls straight, and it's got a little kick to it, but it's not like the exaggerated kick. It's just like a little shimmy on the way down, and then it hits bottom, and it's a beautiful profile. So typically I'll flip into cover, let it go to bottom, shake it a little bit, let it sit, shake it a little bit, let it sit, pop it up, let it sit, and then I'm out, and repeat. That's my process. That's what I do. Throw it in, shake, shake, pop it, pull it out. So that's my flipping jig. But just like the pitching jig, we also have a compact version. And the compact version, same thing. I pinch down that 1/2 inch off of that trailer to get it more compact. And I do the exact same thing to the D-bomb as well. I take about a 1/2 inch off the nose of that thing, just grab a pair of scissors or just pop it off and throw that on there to get that more compact profile. But the difference here is that the no jack has that gaff in it. If I think there's a chance I'm gonna catch a monster, I'm throwing a no jack 100% of the time. Because if I rear back and crack a really big one, I wanna know I'm gonna get him. I don't want any question in the back of my mind that I might lose this fish. I smash them. But if I'm in a lake where there aren't so many giants, and again, I want to get more bites, I go to that compact flipping jig. Same hook that's in the compact pitching jig, just a lighter wire offering, pairs up better, but we've got one that's an Arky style head and one that's a true flipping head. All right, we're 2/3 of the way through this. Now, the rod for that, when I'm throwing that no jack, I'm not messing around. This is also X-Pride. This is the 711 Extra Heavy. It's a beast. It really is. But it is a beast with some flex in the mid. It's not a broomstick. It's a gaff. I mean, it'll crack them, but it's not a broomstick. I still want to load that rod up. I have done battle with giants in heavy cover, and they're coming up and shaking. And I know that I'm going to get those fish because I've got the right gear. Now, I pair that one up to the Bantam. The Bantam, profile-wise, is just like a Metanium, but the Bantam is built for pure power. To give you, to just be able to crank without resistance, even under a monster load. That's what that Bantam is for. Straight 65-pound braid if I'm in the thickest of cover. I add a leader to it if I'm in thinner cover, like if I'm just pitching the edges of stuff, or if I go down to that smaller jig, I'll drop down and I'll add a leader to that, like a 15 to 20 pound leader. But most of the time, heavy cover, straight 65-pound braid to a no jack jig and just go to work with that thing. Pitching it at every piece of cover that I see. But that combination is incredible for fishing that bigger jig. Now, let's talk about the other end of the spectrum, the little guys. So much of bass fishing has been trending towards smaller profiled baits the last few years, and it's for good reason. There's a lot more fishing pressure. It seems like bass fishing has been tougher for a lot of people on a lot of lakes. Going smaller will help you get more bites. But there's a trade-off. When you go smaller, you tend to catch smaller fish too. Not always true. Definitely not always true. But if we're just making a rule, that tends to go together. Now, the jig is sort of that exception. I don't know what it is about a jig. The way that skirt flares creates a lot of secondary movement. That's what I personally think it is, but it's not like I know that that's what it is. When a jig lays on the bottom versus a creature bait and a big bass comes up to inspect it, a bass moves a lot of water with their body just by pulling up next to it. A creature bait will still just be laying there. Whereas a jig, when all that water hits the skirt will start flowing, creating motion even when the craw trailer is not moving. I personally think that helps fool the really big ones into taking a shot. Maybe it's also that the skirt just flares out into an overall larger profile. It could just be that. I don't know. But I know that even in tiny jigs, they tend to get much larger bites than equivalent tiny baits that aren't jigs. It's just the way it is. So with that in mind, micro jigs are a really good option to get numbers of bites and to still have a shot at some bigger fish. But you absolutely need to adapt your gear to not bend out these tiny hooks. I've got two for you. One from Missile Baits, one from Great Lakes Finesse. This little Missile Baits football is a cool option. I catch a ton of fish on this little guy. Look at this compared to a no jack flip. I mean, they're not even in the same ballpark, right? This one could eat this one. It comes with weed guards, but they don't come installed. So you would want to do a drop of glue and stick a weed guard in if you want a weed guard. If you don't care, if you're fishing a open water fishery, a lot of rock where you're just sort of dragging or hopping, don't worry about it. Fish it exposed. You get a great hookup ratio that way. My favorite trailer to pair up to that one, from X-Zone in the Stealth Finesse series, we have the Stealth Craw. This bait pairs up so beautifully to that jig. I love the craw profile. Let me rig it up here. I'll show you what I mean. That true craw profile is just killer. That bait comes pre-scented, killer colors. Like this color combination, again, I'll link it in the description. That color combination is amazing. That jig all summer long. And I'm not talking just little fish factories. I throw that a ton on Chickamauga, which is a big fish lake. But I can get a ton of bites on that combo when I can't get bit on other stuff. Now the other one from Great Lakes Finesse, no keeper, or I'm sorry, no weed guard. It does of course have a keeper, but no weed guard. And then it's a true ball head, okay? But what's interesting about this one is a much longer skirt. Now you can trim that skirt if you want to adjust it, but it starts out really long, which helps create a larger profile. That one, if I want a craw profile, Great Lakes Finesse makes an amazing craw. This is their 2.1 inch snack craw. And I'll show you this guy on here. So we can fish it totally stock, where that craw is almost hidden inside the skirting. Now keep in mind, when it's on the bottom, see the craw is totally inside. But when it's on the bottom, the skirt flares and it just leaves that craw exposed in there. Or we can grab a pair of scissors, trim that skirt a little shorter, and get more of a traditional profile. But that is such a killer little jig. Both of these are amazing options. Now, one more trailer for you from Z-Man. So that's two great craw profiles. If they want a craw, those big claws, that's great. But sometimes, even when we're downsizing, we want options. Just like in the big jigs, sometimes they don't want movement. They don't want the big full profile. And I go down to that D-bomb, that just true profile. Same thing. So Z-Man makes the TRD Bugs, which is like a little beaver style bait. And sometimes I'll switch that out just to get a completely different profile out of that jig. And split the claws. Just a totally different profile, much narrower, but some days that's what they want. So tiny little trailers, 2 or 3 options total, 2 jigs total, 1 ball head, 1 football head. The football head, you can put a weed guard in it if you want it, but that downsized jig all summer long is fishy. If you want to build confidence in fishing a jig, you've never done it, or you've done it and you've never caught them, go down to a little micro jig like that, get some bites, get some confidence, then you can upsize to more of a traditional jig and continue building that confidence. Now, of course, fishing that downsized stuff requires different gear. You can actually throw those jigs on a spinning rod, no problem. But if I have a choice, from Cashin, this is in the Icon series, I throw a lot of Cashin's Bait Finesse rods. I think they're amazing. This is the 7.2 ML. So a slightly longer Bait Finesse rod than a typical Bait Finesse rod, but that helps. Again, we want to load deep. We want to bow up that rod. You can see how it's bowing here in the midsection, not just up here in the tip. Bow up that mid will help keep those fish pinned. I put a Corrado BFS on that, and then braid to leader. Now, a lot of times I'll throw 7 or 8 pound fluoro as well, but if you want to plant a jig hook, especially if the fish are deeper, braid to leader helps a lot with that. And again, I'll link the exact combo in the description. Now, for the guy on a budget, or the guy who wants to gamble with Bait Finesse but doesn't want to spend a fortune to find out if you even want to throw this smaller stuff, Cashin also makes in their Element series, that Z2 Element. This is the 610 ML, so a little bit shorter, but that same exact action. Medium light, that's what ML is. And then still, I stick with that Corrado BFS the vast majority of the time, and braid to leader. You spend a little bit more for a Corrado BFS, but its castability is remarkable. That is a true BFS reel that can throw this stuff all day long, but it can also throw some of the other tiny options if you want to play with some of your other BFS baits as well. But that's a budget rod. It'll save you a bunch of money, and it's a serious BFS rod, so you can dabble in that world as well. Guys, summer jig fishing, it gets really big bites. When fish get lethargic, they stop wanting to move around so much. They were eating a crankbait, that seems to have slowed down. They were eating a swim bait, that seems to have slowed down. You're starting to try to piece it together, figure out how to catch them. That jig, a lot of times, will still catch them. Even when it gets super hot, they back into cover, they get in the shade lines. Flipping that jig in there can get those monsters out. Whether you're going full size or finesse, these are great options. Again, I'll link it all in the description for you. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and we'll talk to you soon.